Am I the a-hole for telling one of my daughter's classmates' mom to frick off about what I put in my daughter's lunch? For some context before the story, I, 38F, cook Asian foods regularly for dinner and for my daughter, Lily's, 7F, lunches at school. This is because my family enjoys these foods, I like to cook these foods, and my mom cooked a bunch of these foods growing up since she's half Japanese. Oftentimes I'll either give my daughter some leftovers from last night's dinner, plus a fruit or veggie and a snack, or I'll make her a quick little bento box or some other thing really quick. So, after school one day, my daughter wanted to play on the playground for a bit before we went home. I said she could play for a few minutes, and she ran off to play. I was waiting next to this other parent, who we'll call Deborah. While I was waiting, Deborah came up to me. "Deborah, are you Lily's mother?" Me, "Oh, yeah, I am, why?" Deborah, "Well, your daughter's lunches have been bothering my son, and I would like to ask you to pack something else." Me, "What? How are they bothering him?" She then proceeded to start talking about how her son was complaining about my daughter's lunches smelling terrible, and that he thought it was disgusting. She also said her son didn't eat most of his lunch because he was so grossed out. Me, "Okay, I understand your son doesn't like the smell, but can't he just sit somewhere else?" Deborah, "Are you kidding me? My son shouldn't have to put up with whatever crap you make your daughter bring to this school, it's disgusting." And she started making more vaguely racist complaints, but I was fed up at this point. Me, "Listen, I understand your son might not like my daughter's food, but he can very easily just not sit next to her. I'm not changing what's in my daughter's lunches because you and your kid don't want to exist near Asian food. Frick off." She angrily stomped off with her kid, and my daughter finished playing soon after, so we went home. I talked to my husband about it, and he said that maybe I shouldn't have told her to frick off, to avoid her bothering us in the future. Am I the a-hole?
Am I the a-hole for taking my daughter out to eat? So, I, 39M, have a daughter, 16F, from a previous marriage. For context, I met my now wife, 37F, when my daughter was 10, and she had a son, 7M, when we met. Our relationship was great, and our connection was really present throughout our relationship. 5 months into our relationship, I introduced her to my ex, 35F, and my daughter. My ex and wife were cordial, and my daughter warmed up to her quickly. From what I know, they had a good relationship. My daughter grew up sort of a picky eater. For example, she won't eat things like oatmeal, tomatoes, garlic, mushrooms, barbecue, anything too salty or sour, etc. She loves spicy food, sweets, and all that. And you could not trick her into eating anything she didn't like. When she was 13, I put 1 garlic clove in the melted butter I was using to make her grilled cheese. IDK how, but she could taste it, and I knew for a fact the taste wasn't that strong. Her taste senses amazed me. Oh, and she ignored me for a whole week and didn't eat anything I cooked for her. I never tried anything like that again. I work a 5 to 8 shift, but yesterday I got off around 9 because my group and I wanted to hurry and finish our part of a work project we had. When I got home, my wife had already prepared dinner and left my plate in the oven. I heated my food and stood at the island and chatted with my wife, who was with our son in the living room. As I was eating, I realized that my wife had cooked garlic stir-fried rice, barbecue chicken, and a vegetable salad consisting of corn, tomatoes, mushrooms, and spinach. I stopped chatting with my wife and just observed my plate for a good 5 minutes. My wife asked what was wrong and if I disliked the food. Finally, after an eternity, I asked what my daughter had eaten because everything she cooked were all foods my daughter disliked. She was quiet for a few moments before finally saying that my daughter had not eaten since lunch. Needless to say, I was upset. I asked her why she didn't switch up the meal to accommodate my daughter's palate. She got really defensive and started saying my daughter was being dramatic and it was just food so she could still eat if she was hungry. We argued and I reminded her that it wasn't that simple for a picky eater like my daughter. After a while of going back and forth, I decided to end the conversation by ignoring my wife. I felt that my daughter's wishes were disregarded. I took my daughter out to eat. I also bought her some sweets and we bonded and talked a lot. I discovered my wife has been purposely cooking food my daughter doesn't like. My daughter has never been one to complain, so she has been using money from her paycheck and she wasn't going to eat this particular night because she had no intention of pulling money out of her savings. We got home around midnight and my wife was upset that I took my daughter out instead of convincing her to eat her cooking. Me and my wife are going to have a long chat when I'm off work tonight. Update. Am I the a-hole for taking my daughter out to eat? I got home about an hour ago and was reading the comments for about 15 minutes. I'll be answering questions at the end of this post. The talk with my wife went okay-ish. I asked her what was going on. My wife was hesitant as she didn't want to have this talk at all. But finally, she said she hates cooking for my daughter. She said that it was too much to go out of her way to constantly accommodate her and how annoying it was to always make sure the food is cooked to a certain texture and seasoned to my daughter's liking. She then revealed that she stopped cooking food the way my daughter liked because our son didn't like it. She then proceeded to say that my daughter just needs to grow up as it was only food and wouldn't kill her and how her being picky was just too draining. I asked why she didn't have a sit down with our kids to make some sort of compromise, and she said her son's needs came before my daughter's. She also revealed that she had straight up stopped buying more than half of my daughter's personalized grocery list because it was a waste of money and only bought our son the snacks that he wanted. I was dumbfounded and asked her if she was just going to let my daughter go hungry, to which she responded by saying all she has to do is eat the food she cooked. I asked her what was draining about putting 1 or 2 pieces of plain chicken aside before putting sauce on it. She said that I wouldn't get it because I didn't cook for my daughter like she did. Which was true, as I'm at work from 5 to 9 and I only cook dinner on weekends, holidays, and holiday breaks. She apologized to me but suggested that I should convince my daughter to eat the food she doesn't like because it would make everyone's life easier. I then asked her if she would think the same thing if it was our son, and she didn't respond, which was answer enough. I don't know what to do now. If she's willing to let my daughter go hungry, how else would she be willing to neglect my daughter? What should I do now? Q&A. My daughter is in no way overweight, and she doesn't only eat junk food for vegetables. She eats carrots, lettuce, corn, asparagus, and cucumbers. For fruit, she eats watermelon, dragon fruit, apples, and mangoes. My daughter can in fact cook. The only reason she did not is because her fall break is coming up and my wife didn't buy her entire grocery list, so she was saving what little was there. Which is honestly crazy because no kid should have to worry about how much food they can eat when they're hungry. My daughter told her bio mom and she's upset and is suggesting that my daughter goes to live with her. My daughter chooses who she spends the year with herself, and if she wants to go, I won't stop her because I don't want my daughter in a house she's being neglected in. Also, I do not in any way force my wife to cook for my daughter. In fact, she insists on cooking for her, and if she came to me and said she didn't want to cook for my daughter, I would understand and wake up early to fix her food for the day or switch my schedule around. My wife goes on one grocery run for the entire month, so if she isn't getting everything on my daughter's grocery list, of course my daughter's meals will be limited. I talked with my daughter, and she isn't mad at my wife at all and is even pushing me to forgive her. It's frustrating cause my 16-year-old daughter is trying to fix our marriage while my wife basically said she could care less about my daughter. My daughter is also willing to go grocery shopping with my wife and pay for her own food, so there isn't any more conflict. Some people were saying she might have affect disorder, and I'm definitely going to look into it. Any advice on what course of action I should take with my wife? On one hand, I love her. On the other, I can't fathom the idea of being with someone who is willing to neglect my daughter. Am I the a-hole for belittling my sister and saying she shouldn't demand her husband help with their baby at night? My husband, 29M, and I, 27M, went through the surrogacy process and had our son 4 months ago. We were thrilled when my sister, 31F, announced her pregnancy and we found out we would be having children very near the same time. Our niece was born a little over 2 months after our son. My situation and my sister's closely mirror each other. Our husbands both work typical 9 to 5s with 30 to 45-minute commutes. My sister is a stay-at-home mom, and I do freelance work from home. For the first 2 weeks after our son was born, the first of which my husband took off of work, we would both take partial night shifts. Once I felt like I had at least some of my bearings on parenthood, I offered to take over completely on weeknights, while he does mornings before work and weekends. It's a collaborative process, and that breakdown of parenting just made sense to me. My husband was the one leaving our home to work every day. He was the one who had to be up by a specific time and make a drive. At 4 months, we no longer have this obstacle anymore, and to be honest, I kind of miss the sweet, quiet bonding time those extra night feeds provided now that he's settled onto a nice sleep schedule and usually only wakes up once. Still, I think we got it down to almost a perfect science before we exited the newborn stage. My sister, on the other hand, is very much still in that phase and struggling. This has been a recurring problem for her from the beginning. She has been coming to me saying she is scared she's going to fall asleep holding the baby, and that her husband won't help her with the night feeds, etc. I tried to give her tips since I've been through it. I suggested she let her partner take over in the evenings, roughly 6 to 9 p.m., so she can go to bed early and catch a few more hours, nap when baby naps, etc. She shot down everything, saying that wouldn't work for them and that she just needed her partner to do some of the night feedings. I reminded her that her husband is the one commuting in the mornings and falling asleep while driving was a very real possibility, and that I had lived through it, and so could she. I then offered to watch her daughter for a few days so she could catch up on sleep. She took major offense to both of these things. She said I was belittling her experience and acting like I was a better parent. She said I couldn't truly empathize with her or give her valuable tips since she had been pregnant and I hadn't, and that me offering to watch my niece just felt like me saying she needed help raising her own daughter. My intentions were definitely not malicious, and I'd like some outside perspective here. Am I the a-hole? Am I the a-hole for making my wife pay half of everything? I, 39M, recently got a raise at work. I'm now making well over double what my wife, 37F, makes at her job. I've always made about double. We live pretty comfortably, we rent but have 2 cars, and can buy whatever we need including luxury items like gaming consoles, TVs, etc. We don't go on vacations or spend foolishly. We split everything 50-50ths and have our own bank accounts. She gives me her share of the rent every month and I pay. If I pay for something like a hotel, she gives the money for her half. Recently, the subject of her paying less came up. She suggested that we each pay an equal percentage of our earnings towards rent and household utilities. We each pay 30% of our salary towards rent and utilities. She says she's been using her credit cards to pay for things since she can't afford rent plus utilities and groceries on her salary, and they are almost maxed. She has never mentioned this, and I don't think I should be held responsible for her inability to manage money. We chose our place together, and she should have picked something she could afford, not make me pay more in the future because she is now struggling, as she puts it. I work hard for my money and am putting away savings to use as a down payment on a house in the future. I already don't go on any big vacations or expensive outings as I know she can't afford her half. She is angry with me and says I'm financially abusing her. I think I'm justified in keeping my money for me. I buy her nice things here and there and occasionally will pay for dinner, which is more than a lot of husbands do. Am I the a-hole for making my wife pay her fair share of things? Am I the a-hole for standing with our child's teacher instead of my wife? We recently got called into school for a meeting because our child, 11M, was using AirPods his mother bought him in class and refused to remove them because another student was able to use theirs. When the teacher asked him to remove said AirPods, he became defensive and gave the teacher an attitude because the teacher refused to address the other student. I just assumed the teacher must have a reason why they refused to address the other student. My wife is upset because in her opinion I made her look foolish by not standing in unison with her. I explained our kids should not be giving authority figures attitude and disrespecting them in front of other students because they feel they are being wronged. I tried to explain the kid who was allowed to use their AirPods maybe hand an IEP or some prior agreement with the school. Am I the a-hole?